And I did come across a Reddit post, which I have summarized here. Um, Game design elements to be avoided. So maybe I should show you the actual Reddit post before we go into that. Is that? Um, it was. Is it this one? So this is the one that I've. So what are some uh, design elements, features that are never fun? I thought it was a fantastic question. Like seriously, what are the ones that are never fun? We're not going to read through all this because it actually there's a lot of replies. There's a lot of very interesting stuff. A lot of very sometimes very contradictory, but that's fine. So we've got a little summary here. I won't mention that it was generated by AI, but it might have been. What have we got here? So the Reddit discussion on R game design focuses on game design elements that are generally considered unenjoyable and should be avoided. So we're going to read through these and maybe discuss them and see whether we maybe agree or disagree. So the summary of the key points: unenjoyable game design elements. Tailing missions. So many users dislike tailing missions, especially those similar to Assassin's Creed, where the player must follow a character without being detected. These missions are often repetitive and frustrating. Are you an Assassin's Creed player, Fraser?
I was very much an Assassin's Creed player. I fell off uh, and missed the hay bale around whatever came after Black Flag.
Okay.
Um, yeah, 2 and the Ezio collection were played a lot of them. Yeah, for sure.
So did that include these types of missions, these tailing
Oh
missions?
yeah,
Oh,
big time.
okay. 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 Yeah. What's your response to this one as being a unenjoyable game design element? Do you agree?
I feel like it's the go-to, right? Like I feel like survey says 90% agree tailing missions unfun.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I like yes, I think they are, but breaking that down, why do I think they're unfun? And I feel like it's the I had the word a second ago, but the fail state being so oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that you have to do a very specific task in a very specific sort of boundary, and if you deviate slightly, restart, and if the checkpoints are bad, then you have to do quite a lot of progress again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I could only assume that's probably the main issue for most players. But funnily
Right.
enough, it reminds me a lot of stealth games, especially classic stealth games without the sort of dynamic stealth.
Mm-hmm.
Just that idea of as soon as you fail, it's a hard reset.
Yeah, because it did remind me a bit of Death Stranding as well, because you have to use stealth in Death Stranding to get around things, and yeah, it just for some reason I kind of agree that the stealth isn't really a huge amount of fun in those games. Maybe for the same reason, I'm not too sure. But that's an interesting one. Tailing missions. So so
And
so do we? Sorry.
I was going to say, I could throw out, I think on the opposite side of that coin would be, um, in Assassin's Creed, they introduced couriers
Mm-hmm.
who had a similar sort of parkour skill set and would run away from you, and your goal was to catch them, tackle them, and you get like quite a large reward.
Okay.
And so I think if we compare those two, you can sort of see why one is more fun and one is more
Right.
unfun, I
That's
suppose.
interesting. Well, tell me. Elaborate on that a bit. 'Cause, I mean,
Mhm.
I can read into it, but tell me. So why do you think it was
Yeah.
more enjoyable
Well,
to
yeah, I
chase the
mean,
couriers?
there's no fail state and reset, right? Like if the courier gets too far,
Mm-hmm.
you lose the opportunity. But that's not a hard reset. It's not a reload, and it's not asking you to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think uh, another part of the issue with the tailing missions is so often it was at odds with the base mechanics of games like Assassin's Creed. Like everything about Assassin's Creed movement is telling you to run fast, climb over things, jump over rooftops,
Mm-hmm.
and then you hit a tailing mission and you have to follow someone who's just walking leisurely down the street.
Okay.
Those are conflicting. If you're running on the rooftop, you're more
Yeah.
likely to be spotted.
Can we think of any
Whereas,
games that are similar?
um, now you got me looking through my Steam library.
I'm thinking of one game. Oh, yeah, but I can't think of many games that I've played that are like this.
I feel like over the past 10 years or so, there's been a big shift away from it.
Right.
I feel like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you asked this, it'd be like, oh my god, yeah, all these games that came
Right.
out in the past 5 years that had
Yeah.
forced tailing missions. But yeah, I
Right.
think this one sort of made enough noise that it really broke through rather rapidly.
Fair enough. Okay. Tailing missions. Bad. Don't use. Do you want to read the next one?
It's a little fuzzy, but I'm seeing forced stealth with high
Hang on.
consequences.
I can make this bigger.
Ah, that's better.
There you go.
Players dislike stealth missions where detection results in mission failure, as this can lead to frustration and repetition. Yeah, very similar
Hmm.
to the tailing missions.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder though. Have you ever played games like the Trials games or
No.
Super Hot? Um, they're like puzzle games at their core. Whether
Mm-hmm.
they like Super Hot is a first-person puzzle game where
Hmm.
time only moves when you do, but the puzzle aspect of it is trying to find like the best route or the best solution.
Right.
But you reset over and over and over and over again until you get it perfect,
Yeah.
and that's enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to reset and go again, and so I don't know. I guess I look at these things like the force stealth and the tailing mission, and the frustration comes from failing and having to restart. But then there's
Hmm.
another genre where the satisfaction is from resetting over and over until you get it right.
Hmm. Would be very interesting to look at those maybe closely and see what the difference is. Why is one enjoyable and the other one not so? It does again coming back to Death Stranding. What I found I didn't like in Death Stranding is I didn't really know what I was doing. And that's kind of to do with the cognitive load, and they're trying. I don't think they did a very good job of training you in that. There's just too much coming at you once. So I think that was
I
the
did,
problem there.
yeah, I was playing some last night, and
Mm-hmm.
I did go through a BT area. Never
Oh,
once saw the outline of a BT.
really?
I I don't know. Yeah, I haven't played much. I've probably put how many hours have I put in? 6 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd only encountered them once before, and I was like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure I meant to crouch, and then I hit the right bumper, and it will show me where they are briefly, and then if they get too close, I meant to hold my mouth and not breathe. Yeah,
Yep.
never saw them once. Um, every now and
Oh,
then, the BB and the little thing on my shoulder would go mad, and
yeah.
I'd see a little pop up that said, hold your breath, and I'd go, okay, and I'd just sort of steer away from where the shoulder mount was looking, but
Right. Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, and
Was it
I think
fun?
no,
No. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
no,
No.
no.
No. No. No. It's that sort of thing. I agree. I don't think those sort of things. I think look, coming back to what you're talking about, super hot though. Like having one game that does it well. That tells me that there is a way to do it to make it actually engaging for players. So so
And I
number
do,
two, yeah, would say number two. There's yes, but no,
yeah. I wonder how much of it. I won't go deep into it, but I've mentioned it before. I wonder how much is to do with setting your players' expectations.
and training,
Mm,
expectations, training. Yeah, those two are really important leading into that.
mm.
So number three we've got here unskippable cutscenes. Oh well, of course, unskippable. Do they still happen? Unskippable cutscenes annoying, especially if they occur before a difficult section or boss fight.
Mm.
Death Stranding once again has some unskippable cutscenes, and it's so annoying. There are other cutscenes that are skippable, but yeah, Yeah, it's just particularly when you've played it multiple times, you're like, yeah, next.
I'd like to lump forced animations into this category as well. When I
Can
was
you explain that a
playing
bit more?
Mirror's Edge, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
playing Mirror's Edge, so they have unskippable. No, they have skippable cutscenes. What am I talking about? But they have there's these like valves, these like classic round valve,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's on a door or like a pipe, and so often you have to run up to one, and then you spend like 5 or 6 seconds watching this animation of Faith slowly turn it, and it either like opens the door it's attached to or clears a path that's blocked.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like those even more like I guess the problem with an unskippable cutscene is as pretty as it might be, if you're wanting to skip it, it's because you want to play the game. You
Yeah,
want to be putting inputs.
yeah.
And so same frustration with these like forced long animations.
Yes.
But the other issue is in a game like Mirror's Edge, which is all about going fast, they use them as ways to break up the flow. I can only hope that it's to hide loading screens, but
Possibly.
I
Possibly.
don't know, and
Yeah.
it just drives me nuts.
Right. So okay. So there's a unanimous agree with unskippable cutscenes as well as unnecessarily long animations.
hmm
Yeah, yeah. I think we'd all agree with that. Cool. Do you want to read number 4?
So, poor inventory management, complex or inconvenient inventory management systems, particularly in crafting games, can detract from the player's experience.
Are you a crafting game player?
Uh, it's kind of hard not to be, right? I feel like crafting infiltrated a lot of genres since Minecraft.
True, but there's sort of the more the hardcore crafting
Mm.
survival. And
Yeah,
then
I've played my
there's-
fair share of those. I've avoided more of like the management simulation stuff, like Factorio, Satisfactory.
Mm-hmm.
I've avoided those, but I've played, I mean, plenty of Minecraft and like the Forest and those sort of games.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So
This-
I kind of compare this, say, between Rust and 7 Days to Die, 2 games I've played a lot of. So Rust keeps the whole inventory management system kind of bare bones. Like you can't. So say in 7 Days to Die, they've added a button like a quality of life button where you can just transfer everything from your inventory into a box or whatever like that, and that makes a lot of sense. Whereas Rust doesn't do that, or didn't do it last time I played it. But there's a good reason for that, and that's because the part of Rust, when you're doing your inventory, you are vulnerable, so you're stuck in your inventory. And you can be attacked by another player. So there's actually a reason to get really good at doing the inventory management and doing it really, really fast. So I think I agree generally having like quality of life things for inventory management systems is generally good. But at the same time, if you've got a reason like Rust has to, and when you're doing your inventory management, you are in potentially in danger, then there is maybe a reason to keep it more simple. But if you still want to make it usable, but simple.
This does feel like the first one, and maybe the only one that isn't. It's not. It doesn't feel like an actual choice. Like it feels like, if I'm thinking of poor inventory management, that feels like, the developers had challenges in trying to optimize that player experience, or whether that's a lack of, like a UI designer or
UX type stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's because it's one of those things that you don't want to spend that much time on. The inventory system is like, yeah. Let's get the fun parts of the game done, and who cares about the inventory system?
But yeah, less of like I don't think anybody chooses to implement a poor inventory management system. Um, it's more like, try to avoid it because obviously
Yeah,
it's unfun. Unlike,
yeah,
unskippable cutscenes or forced stealth, those are choices that were made. Yeah.
yes. Well, I would say the poor inventory management. You need to put more time and resources into your UX stuff,
Hmm.
and you need to have a good UX person there
Yeah.
to come and do that. So that's yeah. If you don't have the money, that's yeah, that can be a problem.
Hmm.
Number five, grinding and fetch quests. People don't enjoy those. Mindless fetch quests and grinding to reach a certain level can be put off, especially in MMOs. I think in the last 10 years, this has become much less of a problem. I think that a lot of game designers, developers have realized that mindless fetch quests and grinding are not enjoyable, and it's certainly I'm seeing a lot less of it than I used to see. What about you?
Yeah. The only touch point I have would be Destiny. Um, it's the only game I've played that I can think of that has that sort of stuff.
Okay, is there a reason that it's got that?
I guess it was. I would say they implemented it to have that like power level, and the player progression, slowly getting incrementally better equipment to increase their overall score,
Mm-hmm.
in a general sense.
Mm-hmm.
But this, yeah, I don't know if it's just way out of my genre of played games, and so I don't get it, or like you said, if it's become such less prevalent in modern games that I've just really missed sort of the peak of it because
Yeah, it
I
used to be
can't.
very
It's
common. Like it was just fetch quests. Oh my god. Here we are again. Go and get blah blah blah. There's so many
Yeah,
games that were just repetitive, and you'd go and do this, and then you'd be sent back to do that, and it was just. And you don't get that. I haven't come across a game that really does that. I've maybe come to some, a little bit. You've almost there, and then they change things up a bit, and they don't. You don't get into that mindless fetch quest. Um,
so do you think that games have gotten better at avoiding these types of quests in general, or hiding them better, or providing a more adequate reward for completing them? Like, how do you think
I think I think with fetch quests the problem was that they were always the same kind of thing,
Mhm.
and it was basic, and the pattern was the same, so that you would go somewhere. I wish I could think of a specific example, but you'd go somewhere, you'd meet someone, and it'd be like, oh, I've lost my dog. Can you go and find it for me? And then you'd go somewhere else and oh, I found this dog. Yeah, to get it back, you have to go and find a shrubbery. Because I want a shrubbery and bring it back, and then you can have the dog and then you go and get the shrubbery, and someone else would be like, and it was just this it was very repetitive. So I think what they've done is they've managed to avoid that repetitiveness by adding new elements to it, perhaps new story things to it, not having too many of those stacked upon each other.
Mhm.
So you can have the fetch quests are actually still there. Having to go and get something, it's an integral part of most games or
Yeah.
many games, but they're not stacked on top of each other so that you're just
Mhm.
continuously going and doing the same thing.
I think about I think it was in Yakuza Kiwami.
Mm-hmm.
You look
You're
after
the
this
you're the
girl.
Yakuza expert
I've
these
been
days.
really liking Yakuza. I'm really enjoying it. And you come across this dog that's getting attacked by this group of thugs, and you beat him up, and then the girl's like, the dog needs food, like it's starving, and so
Mm-hmm.
you run off to go buy food, and you come back, and she's like, okay, but what is the dog going to eat the food off of? And so you got to run off and grab a plate,
Oh, okay.
and then the dog eats, but it stops eating. It's like, oh, the dog needs water because it can't eat without being hydrated, so you have to run off. And yeah, you do those three, and it took me the whole conversation to be like, I guess that's a fetch quest, but it's the only time it's happened in my playthrough so far, and I guess I don't know, just the rule of threes and comedy. I was finding it comical, the idea of this puppy and me
Okay.
having to go and do it several times. But
Yeah.
I guess that's what you're saying, right? Like there isn't multiple of those stacked on top of each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
and it's got novelty on its side, to really sort of alleviate, I guess, the frustrations that players have found over time from fetch quests.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Should we move on to the next one? Number six.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through that one?
So FOMO mechanics. FOMO is standing for fear of missing out. Elements such as limited time items can be frustrating if not implemented thoughtfully.
What is this referring to? This is I haven't come across games that do this. Have you?
I mean, if we want to reference last week, Overwatch has been notorious for those sorts of mechanics.
Oh, right, right, right.
So
But
having
that's outside the game though, isn't it? That's kind of the meta game.
interesting. Yeah, it's because it's just the cosmetics.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's a good point. If I try to narrow that to in-game stuff,
I'm not aware of in-game stuff. Certainly external stuff, and maybe again, Rust is the main one that I've come across that has skins that are available. Like,
well,
they'll be available for a week.
Overwatch
Um,
just recently had, I think it was a handful of days where you could try out the hero that's coming in the next season. So a
mhm.
brand new character to the game that you could only play for a limited time. Um, I don't know if you would lump that in there.
I'm not sure. Maybe this is for those people who play those sort of online, those type of online games a lot more. If anyone happens to be listening to this and has an example that you have experienced, please feel free to put it in the comments. I can't
Especially if it's got
really
those
relate to it.
direct gameplay. Um,
If it's in game, particularly, but I don't know. Maybe Tarkov, is Tarkov like that?
I guess Fortnite with their like evolving map, right?
Hmm.
But all of these examples that I'm thinking of, even the Overwatch ones, like the skins is the most annoying, but everything else, I've only really heard enjoyment.
Hmm.
Because it's an introduction of novelty again, and
Hmm.
this feeling of things are changing and being part of things. Like I guess, obviously the idea of missing out
Yeah.
is stressful, but I don't know, maybe for a lot of players, the opportunity to be a part of a limited time event is more um, enjoyable than the fear of potentially missing it.
Is it? I'm wondering whether it might be young kids who have this one because the reason I say that is because like if I want something, as an adult, I'm earning money and I can generally buy it. Like if I want this particular skin and it's only out for a week, it's not that often that I don't have enough money to buy it. But I think if you're, maybe, still in school, high school, or early high school, and you don't have a lot of money and something is there for a very short amount of time and you can't get the money together to buy it, then maybe I can see that. But I can't really think of another example for myself personally.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Hmm. Okay. Well, anyway, let's go on to number 7. You might have something to say with this being a Souls fan.
Mm.
Long run backs. Didn't we talk about this last week? I think players
Yeah.
dislike having to restart from a distant checkpoint after failing a difficult section or a boss fight. Now, I kind of agree. I do agree. Like, it pisses me off. Quite frankly, it really pisses me off having to restart from 10 minutes before the last. In fact, I just experienced it. I actually bought Near Automata, a game that I'd heard about for a long time, and I started playing it, and I got like 10, 20 minutes in, and I died, and it put me right at the beginning. I haven't played it since. Thanks to the Near developers. But as a Souls aficionado, let me hear your take on this because this is where it comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the earliest I can think. That's definitely where I was first introduced to it.
Hmm.
And I guess the typical arguments for a long run back would be that you have to fully engage in the game's mechanics. You have to be good at, predicting enemy attacks and moving out of the way and navigating, managing your stamina before getting to the boss fight, where you have to, demonstrate mechanical knowledge and memorization of attack patterns. And the counter argument is, if the boss is so hard that I'm going to die over and over and over again, I'm gaining nothing in those runbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a buffer to being able to try again.
So you comparing those two different scenarios?
Those are the typical arguments for and against. Personally, I am not fully made up my mind.
Okay.
I can. Well, at a boss rush is basically a genre unto itself now, right? The idea of the game is just a string of boss fights, and you go from one to the next.
Do the Souls games come under that?
The first one definitely didn't, but Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3, where you get a bonfire outside of each one, I can see an argument for it. Obviously, a boss rush game, it's typically just the bosses.
Right.
Whereas Souls games, there's still a lot of, exploration and fighting regular enemies.
Right.
But no, I mean, I can see the frustration, but yeah, I'm sort of just like, like a lot of design discussions with Dark Souls, it's like, FromSoft clearly has a very particular vision for the design.
Yeah.
And so...
it's their successful games. You can't, you can't fault that. I mean, they have their particular player base as well. And I would say, like, I'm not really a Souls player, but I did play Elden Ring, and I really enjoyed it, although it did make me rage quit multiple times. But the way that there are particular people who enjoy these types of games, and the ones who I find really seem to enjoy them are those people who come across, and I think they approach life in the same way. They come across a challenge, and I think you can see a lot of really successful, like, entrepreneurs, business people, stuff like that, who have this competitive view of life, and it's like they will keep just grinding away until they beat this thing. And it doesn't matter they have to go 10 minutes back and start from scratch. They will go step by step, and they will beat that, and they will not give up until they beat it. That's not me. I would rather work a way around. I prefer to do something different. But there are those people who really enjoy that, and I've, the people I've spoken to, students generally, who really like Souls games, tend to have that very quite competitive personality and will just grind through until they get it. And I appreciate that. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's, I see that. Okay, that's fine. That's not how I am, but I think in an attitude towards life, I think that's actually not a bad thing to have.
I do find it interesting that you draw that to, like, the sort of Souls games enjoyers, because for me, I look at sort of the evolution of the game design from Dark Souls 1, 3 to Elden Ring, and they've sort of, by the point you get to Elden Ring, they've really shifted the experience away from that. Like, Elden Ring, more than any of the Souls games that came before it, if you come up to a boss and you don't feel like you can beat it, there's several other directions you can go in. Continue to explore, engage in the game, and level up, so that when you come back, you're more equipped for it. Whereas in, like, Dark Souls 1, yes, it had branching paths, but a lot of the bosses would block off the rest of the path. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's interesting because it seems like FromSoft's goals have really changed over time.
Don't forget Elden Ring, I think, appealed to a much broader audience as well. Like, I'm not a Souls player. I loved Elden Ring.
Yep.
So there was a much broader appeal
Mm.
in there. So,
And I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
you can look at another FromSoft game which I love, being Armored Core,
Mm-hmm.
um, is quite the opposite of Elden Ring as well. And back to that sort of sense of, yeah, like you have a challenge
Yeah.
and a boss or whatever, and you will just have to keep trying at it till you get it. So I guess that's a good point. Given that context, it seems as though FromSoft maybe has deliberately tried to make Elden Ring more approachable, and then Armored Core, they've gone, no, there's a very specific group of people who will really enjoy this,
Yeah.
and so we'll make it like that.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did that. I think they've made it much more open to people who are not maybe quite so hardcore like myself,
Yeah.
who enjoy that type of thing, who sort of get something out of it. But I would never be that hardcore kind of player. But I think that's good, to make your games more accessible. But I think the next game might be as bad, or might be as hardcore. We don't know.
Yeah, especially for FromSoft's thing, there's always been a discussion around should there be difficulty options in Dark Souls games, and so I think, what Elden Ring has done in terms of opening up that accessibility by allowing there to be multiple avenues to overcome challenges, in a sense, baking the difficulty in the game experience rather than as an optional setting, is a really interesting way to try and solve that problem.
All right, let's move on. We still we're still going to look at Mirror's Edge. Potential solutions and considerations. So implementation matters. Yeah, this is really important. Many users agree that no mechanic is inherently bad. It's implementation that matters. I think you'd agree with that. Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting one. I want to try and find a mechanic that everyone says is inherently bad now.
Well, the ones we looked at, I guess tailing missions, was that the one inherently bad?
Yeah.
Okay.
And forced stealth. I don't know. I would
But
love.
didn't
to
we
hear
say
an
there was
argument
one
for why
a
it's
forced
not.
stealth that, like you were talking about, super hot, was it? Forced stealth.
Yes.
So that one
Sorry,
actually
no,
worked.
there's no forced stealth in Super Hot. Super
Oh.
Hot, it just has it's a puzzle game, so you have like a very defined failure state, and part of the enjoyment is from failing and restarting instantly and trying over and over.
Right. Okay. All right. So maybe you disagree with that one. That's fair enough. Player agency, providing players with agency and flexibility can improve the experience of otherwise disliked mechanics. I'd say training as well, training your players along with that. Interactive loading screens, making loading screens interactive could enhance the player's experience. What? What do you mean interactive loading screens?
I don't know if they mean like sort of what we talked about animations that hide loading screens. So opening a door that's really heavy, or squeezing between two walls to slow the player down and reduce the camera.
Yeah.
Or if they mean like Skyrim loading screens where you can spin the 3D model and it has a little tip and you can go to the next tip.
I mean, that's pretty much, that's like every game now, isn't it? The little tips. I mean, I think that's really useful.
Yeah.
A few times I've learned some really important information. I'm like, oh, okay, what a great tip. Yeah. I'm not quite sure what they mean here either. So if anyone's got any other ideas, again, please put something in the comments. That would be great. So there we go. Game design elements to be avoided. We've had 7 there. That's pretty good. And I would agree with kind of most of those. I think I think there's some interesting ones there. This is from Reddit. So I mean, these are the ones that people from Reddit have actually decided were the ones they didn't like. So maybe you like them, maybe you can make them work. I'm not too sure.
And if you want a challenge, try making a game that is just these 7.
I love that. Yeah, why not? Just use these mechanics and see how we go. Cool. Alrighty. Well, that's kind of interesting. I think this is kind of quite useful.